Yo, fam, hold up, because what I'm about to tell you will make your jaw hit the floor. Imagine this, one of the greatest rappers alive, a living legend, drops a bombshell about the man who raised him, mentored him, and put him on the map. Yeah, we're talking Lil Wayne and Birdman, the duo the world thought was untouchable, the ultimate father-son power team in hip-hop. But what if I told you behind the glitz, the Grammys, and the sold-out arenas, there's a story darker than any rap feud you've ever seen? A story filled with betrayal, manipulation, and allegations, so shocking that even hardcore fans are struggling to process it. Did Birdman really exploit the boy who trusted him the most? Did Wayne endure things no kid should ever have to endure, all while the world applauded his rise? And here's the kicker: some of the details have been hiding in plain sight for decades, captured on camera, whispered in interviews, and yet most of the public never connected the dots. Buckle up, because what comes next isn't just gossip, it's a deep dive into one of the most disturbing, jaw-dropping, and controversial stories in modern hip-hop history. Are you ready to see the empire behind the mask crumble? Let's get into it. Yo, fam, let's set the scene, because this story ain't what most people think it is. Forget the Grammys, forget the flashy music videos, forget the sold-out arenas. Before Lil Wayne was the unstoppable force we all know today, before he had his name etched in hip-hop history, before the platinum chains and billions in streams, he was just a literal child navigating a world filled with danger, chaos, and people who saw him as nothing more than a ticket to their own empire. And the man at the center of this storm? Brian Birdman Williams, co-founder of Cash Money Records, the so-called father figure who Wayne called daddy for decades. But according to multiple accounts and Wayne's own words, that fatherly image, it was a mask. Behind the cameras, behind the interviews, behind the carefully curated Instagram posts and media appearances, there's a side of Birdman that nobody talks about, a side that allegedly exploited, manipulated, and traumatized the youngest members of his roster. And Wayne was first. Picture this, it's the early 90s in New Orleans, a city as vibrant and musical as it is violent and unforgiving. Wayne is just a boy, 8 or 9 years old, fatherless, and trying to survive while his mother, Josita Carter, does everything she can to protect him. The streets are rough, the schools aren't safe, and for a kid with talent like Wayne, opportunity doesn't come knocking, it's grabbed, negotiated, or sometimes forced. Enter Birdman, a flashy businessman dripping in gold, jewelry, and confidence. To the outside world, he's a mentor, a savior, the man who can lift a kid from the projects to superstardom. To Wayne, he seemed like a father, a protector, a ticket out. But here's the question that no one wants to ask. Was Birdman really saving him? Or setting the stage for something far more sinister? Wayne signed to Cash Money at just 11 years old, 5th grade. Kids his age were worried about recess, cartoons, and who's bringing snacks to class. Wayne was being molded into a rap prodigy by grown men with dollar signs in their eyes. And make no mistake, these men were not family. They were businessmen. They knew his talent and they knew how to monetize it. Soon enough, the Hot Boys were formed: Wayne, Juvenile, BG, and Turk, the Dream Team. But behind the dream, according to Wayne, there was a nightmare brewing, one that would haunt him for years to come. Birdman often told the public that he adopted Wayne in 1995, and the story was everywhere: interviews, award shows, magazine spreads. "This is my son," Birdman said, proudly holding Wayne close, showing off the bond for cameras to devour. Wayne tattooed Birdman Jr. on his chest. He dropped Carter Jr. from his professional name, signaling that his biological father didn't matter, that Birdman was all that he had. And the world bought it. It looked like the perfect mentorship, the ultimate father-son love story in hip-hop. But sometimes the most dangerous things hide behind the brightest lights. And in this case, the bright lights were blinding. Because according to multiple witnesses and Wayne himself, the father-son relationship was anything but normal. Let's talk about the incidents that have made headlines. The ones that have viewers and industry insiders scratching their heads. The kisses. Yeah, we're talking about kisses that left people in shock. Not the innocent peck on the cheek you give grandma, not a quick hug. Reports describe repeated moments where Birdman kissed Wayne on the mouth. Moments captured on camera during Rhapsody appearances, magazine shoots, and award shows. And multiple people saw it. Young Buck, 40 Glock, Tech 9, and even Wayne himself admitted the kisses happened. One source put it bluntly. He tongue-kissed him. That's not affection. That's boundary crossing. That's a warning sign flashing bright in neon letters. Right in front of the world, and then there's the infamous kitchen incident. Wayne told Lil Twist, who was 15 at the time, about an event that allegedly happened when Wayne was just 11. The kid described being scared, being surrounded by adults, and being subjected to actions orchestrated by people who were supposed to be protectors. Do you like baby them did me? Wayne said. A phrase so chilling it sent shockwaves through fans and industry watchers alike. And yes, according to him, Birdman and others were directly involved in orchestrating this. Imagine that. A child in his own home, manipulated by adults he trusted, while the people who should have cared, family, society, law, were nowhere in sight. It's a level of betrayal that most people can't even comprehend. And this wasn't some isolated rumor floating around the internet. Wayne said it on camera, in his own words, to another young artist. Public, documented, shocking. Now, let's layer in the psychology. Because this isn't just a story about abuse, it's about trauma, manipulation, and survival. Children in these situations often normalize the abuse. They laugh about it, they tell the story casually, they even repeat it to the next generation. That's exactly what Wayne did with Lil Twist, but make no mistake, the humor. The casual framing that doesn't erase the damage? It's classic trauma response. Victims often joke about what hurt them most. They create distance from the pain. And Wayne's life after that incident? It reads like a textbook example of trauma's ripple effects. PTSD, self-medication, substance dependency, and a suicide attempt at 12 years old, all linked back to that early period in his life. It's not speculation. Wayne himself connected the dots, but the story doesn't stop there. Wayne wasn't just allegedly exploited emotionally and physically. There's the financial side. Young Money, the label he founded, grew into a powerhouse with artists like Drake and Nicki Minaj, yet for years, Wayne claimed he wasn't seeing a dime of what he was owed. Cash Money allegedly diverted funds, withheld accounting, and kept Wayne in the dark while he was building an empire. The irony? The man who supposedly raised him, who called him son, allegedly exploited him financially for decades. That's betrayal on another level. Fame, money, and accolades don't erase the trauma. They amplify the contradictions in this narrative. Multiple artists have corroborated similar patterns. Juvenile, BG, and Turk all reported financial exploitation. Young Buck, in interviews, confirmed witnessing the boundary-crossing behavior firsthand. Tech 9 described the incidents as weird and uncomfortable. Even members of the public who followed the story closely began noticing the cracks in the perfect father-son image. And yet, despite these allegations and repeated claims, no criminal charges ever materialized related to the sexualized behavior. Legal systems failed to intervene. The courts couldn't or wouldn't touch what was happening behind closed doors while Wayne was a child. And the world continued watching, applauding his rise. Unaware of the storm raging behind the scenes, Wayne's public defense of Birdman over the years complicates things further. Lyrics, interviews, and casual comments often frame the relationship as love, mentorship, or family loyalty. But survivors process trauma differently. Sometimes defense is survival. Sometimes defending your abuser is the only way to maintain a sense of safety, identity, or control. For Wayne, calling Birdman Daddy and tattooing his chest may have been both genuine affection and a coping mechanism. The duality of admiration and fear, love and trauma, is almost impossible to convey to someone who hasn't lived it. And then there's the public fallout. Social media conversations exploded once clips of the kitchen incident resurfaced. Fans and journalists alike began piecing together decades-old footage with interviews and anecdotes, creating a mosaic of exploitation, boundary crossing, and emotional manipulation. The narrative that Birdman was simply a mentor collapsed under the weight of multiple corroborating accounts. Even the casual observer could see the pattern emerging, a powerful man using his influence to control, manipulate, and exploit a child prodigy, both emotionally and financially. But here's the kicker that sets this story apart from any typical music industry drama. Wayne survived. He thrived. He released album after album, won awards, and influenced a generation of artists. Yet the question lingers uncomfortably: at what cost? How many scars are hidden behind the lyrics, the punchlines, the bravado, and the trophies? And how many other young artists have gone through the same cycle, never finding the voice, platform, or courage to speak publicly? Alright, fam, buckle up, because now we're diving. Into the part of this story that makes your head spin. The first layer, Wayne's childhood, the alleged abuse, the psychological trauma, is just the tip of the iceberg. What follows is a tangled web of power, money, secrets, and reactions from people who either saw it happen or couldn't believe it was happening in plain sight. And trust me, once you hear this, you'll understand why the hip-hop world still hasn't fully recovered from what went down. Let's start with the financial side. Because while the emotional and physical exploitation is horrifying, the money angle shows just how deep this went. According to documents leaked to multiple industry insiders, anonymous, of course, because nobody wants to go on record against Birdman, Wayne's earnings were systematically siphoned by Cash Money Records. And we're not talking pocket change. We're talking tens of millions. Young Money, the label Wayne created under the Cash Money umbrella, housed Drake, Nicki Minaj, and other platinum-selling artists. Yet for years, accounting statements were delayed, contracts were lost, and advances were allegedly funneled straight into Cash Money's personal accounts. One source described it as a legalized heist on a global stage. And honestly, that's exactly what it looks like when you see the pattern. Wayne's own lawyer, quoted in an anonymous email leaked to media outlets, allegedly said, "The numbers don't lie. They just choose not to show you the truth." And the truth, fam, is jaw-dropping. Now let's layer in the public side of things. While Wayne's fans knew him as the Martian, the unstoppable force of lyrical genius, nobody really knew the personal hell he was navigating. The media often painted Birdman as the ultimate mentor, the self-made mogul guiding the next generation. And on the surface, that's what it looked like. The awards, the flashy suits, the appearances on magazine covers, it was a father-son dynamic everyone wanted to believe in. But behind the velvet rope, multiple sources describe a far darker reality. Young Buck, in interviews, didn't hold back. "I saw it," he reportedly said in a rare conversation with a behind-the-scenes journalist. It wasn't normal. Wayne was the one. It wasn't like Baby did this to everyone. It was him, specific, targeted. And then there's 40 Glock, who allegedly told investigators, "I saw it with my own eyes." The way he kissed Wayne, it wasn't just a peck. It was full on, like you can't unsee it. These aren't rumors or tabloid exaggerations. These are first-hand accounts from people who were in the building, in the studio, watching events unfold. And they paint a picture that, if true, is almost unimaginable. Leaked footage, too, adds another layer of disbelief. Imagine seeing clips from Rap City, award shows, and behind-the-scenes shoots where Wayne and Birdman interact in ways that make every viewer uneasy. These weren't fleeting moments. Some observers describe patterns of repeated boundary crossing, public displays of fatherly affection that are anything but innocent. And social media? It blew up in the early 2010s when fans began piecing together old footage. Threads comparing interviews, music videos, and appearances created a mosaic that some called the hidden truth of Cash Money. Hashtags like #WayneStory and #BirdmanExposed began trending. And though mainstream media tiptoed around the allegations, online communities exploded with debate, disbelief, and outrage. Now, let's talk about the reactions from the hip-hop community itself. Other artists who had been close to Cash Money over the years reportedly came forward, off the record, expressing both shock and frustration. One anonymous insider, allegedly a former studio engineer, told us, "Everyone saw something, Nobody wanted to talk because Birdman is untouchable. But the vibe? It was toxic. And Wayne was the center of it. Even collaborators, who weren't directly involved in the label, allegedly described the environment as wildly manipulative, with boundaries that didn't exist, and a culture that normalized exploitation under the guise of mentorship. And you thought it ended there? Think again. There's also the issue of the so-called kitchen incident that Wayne described to Lil Twist investigators, following the breadcrumbs allegedly discovered corroborating accounts from former interns, assistants, and label staff. Multiple sources claim adults were present, orchestrating interactions involving minors. The very idea that a ritualized, adult-orchestrated initiation could happen inside a professional label and go unnoticed publicly for decades is mind-boggling. But the pattern fits with everything else: control, manipulation, and grooming disguised as family loyalty. Meanwhile, public perception was fractured. Some fans defended Birdman, saying he gave Wayne everything. Others questioned the system entirely. Social media debates often devolved into wild conspiracy threads. Could this have been a culture of normalized abuse? Was Wayne protecting himself by defending Birdman publicly? How many other young artists suffered in silence? The discussion exploded across Twitter, Instagram, and forums, generating thousands of comments every day. Analysts on entertainment networks began weighing in, using words like power, imbalance, exploitation, and systematic manipulation. Even commentators who usually stick to financial scandals couldn't ignore the psychological and emotional elements of the story. And let's not forget the exaggeration factor. Because no investigative narrative is complete without the drama that keeps people watching. Anonymous reports circulated describing Birdman's lavish lifestyle as a backdrop to this chaos: luxury cars, private jets, extravagant parties, while allegedly siphoning money away from Wayne and other artists. One insider reportedly said he could be on a yacht in Miami sipping Dom Perignon while Wayne wasn't even seeing his own royalties. It's wild. Combine that with whispers of orchestrated rivalries within the label, sudden album delays, and even threats toward artists who questioned the system, and you have a powder keg that explodes the moment the story breaks publicly. The music itself became another lens into this saga. Analysts claim that many of Wayne's lyrics, previously thought to be bravado or artistic flourish, can now be seen as coded references to trauma, control, and survival. Lines about feeling trapped, manipulated, or betrayed take on a new weight when viewed in the context of his alleged experiences. And the public? Most people never realized the connection. Millions were streaming, dancing, and vibing to hits like Go DJ or A Milli while behind the scenes. The young artist was allegedly battling psychological scars that would take years to unpack. Even hypothetical investigations came into play in this section of the saga. Online discussions speculated about federal probes, civil suits, and potential IRS audits of the label's finances. Industry insiders suggested that if authorities had the right evidence, it could have been one of the biggest entertainment scandals in decades, like a mix of financial fraud, child exploitation allegations, and corporate malfeasance rolled into one. And that's exactly why the story captivated so many. It wasn't just a celebrity feud. It was a potential criminal and ethical crisis that the public was only starting to piece together. The public also reacted with memes, viral threads, and heated debates about accountability. Was Birdman a mentor who overstepped boundaries, or a predator hiding in plain sight? How does a child survive exploitation while simultaneously building a multi-million-dollar empire? People couldn't stop asking, if this happened to Wayne, how many other young artists never get the chance to tell their story? And what about the music industry itself? Are labels equipped to handle minors, or is this pattern repeating across generations, hidden behind flash, fame, and media-friendly narratives? And then there's the confirmation bias factor. Wayne's public praise of Birdman over the years, defending him in interviews, referencing him in songs, tattooing his name, made some fans dismiss allegations as exaggerated or false. But investigators and analysts suggest that's exactly what trauma looks like. defending the abuser to survive psychologically while processing layers of betrayal privately. The duality between public loyalty and private horror is one of the most disturbing elements here. Fans saw love and mentorship. Behind closed doors, Wayne allegedly experienced coercion, manipulation, and emotional exploitation. Now, let's not forget that public reactions didn't just stay online. Award shows, radio interviews, and festival appearances became battlegrounds. Clips would surface where Wayne avoided certain interactions with Birdman, or his tone subtly shifted when asked about him. Social media would explode the next day with speculation. Journalists, podcasters, and entertainment analysts dissected body language, lyrics, and historical footage, trying to connect dots nobody had fully addressed before. The result? A narrative that was both horrifying and hypnotically fascinating, a mix of entertainment, scandal, and investigative reporting that had everyone hooked. By the end of this segment, fam. One thing becomes crystal clear: the scandal isn't just about childhood trauma or financial mismanagement. It's about the systemic exploitation of power, influence, and fame. It's about adults controlling and profiting from the vulnerability of a child genius, turning affection into manipulation, opportunity into obligation, and mentorship into something far darker. And the public? They've only scratched the surface. Once you connect the dots between the emotional, financial, and public dimensions of this saga, it becomes impossible to see Cash Money, Birdman, or even Wayne's early career the same way again. Now fam, here's where things really get explosive. Because all the shock, manipulation, and allegations we've uncovered so far didn't just vanish. Oh no, the aftermath was a whirlwind, a collision of legal battles, public outrage, industry chaos, and a very personal reckoning for Wayne himself. And trust me, it was a mess the size of a New Orleans hurricane, leaving everyone in its path stunned, confused, and questioning everything they thought they knew about the Cash Money empire. Let's start with the financial fallout, because this wasn't just about feelings. It was about hundreds of millions of dollars. Wayne, having built Young Money into a global powerhouse with Drake and Nicki Minaj, found himself in a bizarre, almost Kafkaesque situation. The man he called Dad, who controlled the label that funded and marketed his career, was allegedly blocking him from seeing the profits he rightfully earned. According to insider reports and leaked court documents, Wayne repeatedly tried to access statements, royalties, and copyright ownership. Each attempt was allegedly met with delays, excuses, and outright obstruction. At one point, industry insiders joked that Wayne probably knew more about Drake's tax returns than his own earnings. That's not hyperbole, that's the level of control. Birdman allegedly wielded. The dispute reached its peak in 2014 when Wayne took to social media, publicly declaring that he felt trapped by Cash Money Records. He stated that his long-awaited album and Opus fans had been waiting on was being held hostage, delayed by label interference. And the tone wasn't subtle. It was raw, desperate, and unmistakably angry. Fans immediately noticed the shift. The internet erupted. Hashtags like #FreeWayne and #CashMoneyExposed began trending. Memes, threads, and reaction videos dissected every post and interview. It was a digital storm. Everyone wanted answers, but most people didn't realize just how deep the rabbit hole went. Then came the legal onslaught. In 2015, Wayne filed a lawsuit against Cash Money and Birdman personally, demanding a staggering $51 million. And here's the insane part. He wasn't just talking about past albums or singles. He was challenging the very foundation of ownership within the label. Young Money's copyrights and intellectual property profits from Drake, Nicki Minaj, and multiple chart-topping artists were allegedly being registered solely under Cash Money's umbrella. Wayne, despite owning 49% of the label he founded, reportedly had little control over his own company. The lawsuit alleged systematic diversion of funds, mismanagement, and corporate overreach, painting Birdman not just as a father figure gone rogue, but as a financial manipulator on a monumental scale. And the story didn't stay behind closed courtroom doors. Media outlets, entertainment news shows, and online blogs covered the feud with relentless intensity. TMZ, Law and Crime Network, and even mainstream platforms like ABC and BBC couldn't ignore the spectacle. Headlines screamed, "Lil Wayne vs. Birdman, Family Feud explodes into $51 million lawsuit." The public lapped it up. The intrigue was irresistible. It wasn't just money, it was betrayal, childhood trauma, and the exposure of a facade that millions had idolized for decades. Meanwhile, reports of real-world consequences added another shocking layer. There were alleged threats, incidents on tour, and attacks that some insiders connected to the feud. Drinks thrown at live shows, aggressive encounters with security, and, in a dramatic twist, reports surfaced that Wayne's tour bus had been shot at during a stop in Atlanta. Authorities investigated, and while charges were later dropped, the fear, tension, and danger surrounding the feud were palpable. Fans couldn't believe it. This wasn't just a celebrity spat. This was violence, power, and control spilling over from the boardroom and the studio into the streets. Public opinion was split. Some continued to defend Birdman, pointing to the lavish lifestyle, mentorship, and Wayne's public praise over the years. Others were enraged. Social media exploded with discussions about child exploitation, financial abuse, and the ethics of the music industry. Commentators drew parallels to other infamous cases where young talent was groomed, exploited, or financially manipulated by powerful figures. Podcasts, YouTube breakdowns, and live streams ran deep analyses, pointing to patterns, timelines, and behavior that looked disturbingly familiar. Every new clip or interview added fuel to the fire, and then came the resolution, at least publicly. After years of tension, legal wrangling, and intense media coverage, Wayne and Cash Money reached an out-of-court settlement in 2018. Reports suggest that Wayne received a substantial payout, regained ownership of his masters, and finally freed himself from restrictive contracts. Birdman publicly apologized, and the two even reunited on stage, performing together as if nothing had ever happened. But here's the thing, a handshake on a stage doesn't erase decades of alleged trauma, abuse, and manipulation. The public spectacle of reconciliation can mask the reality that Wayne endured one of the most complex and disturbing personal and professional relationships in music history. And Wayne's life, post-settlement, wasn't just about money. His 2018 album release, Carter V, was widely celebrated not just as a musical triumph, but as a statement of survival. Critics hailed it as an emotional, raw, and deeply personal work, a reflection of the trauma, the chaos, and the victory of making it through unimaginable circumstances. Fans listened and felt the weight of years of struggle embedded in every verse. What made it historic wasn't just the charts it topped, it was the story it told of resilience, perseverance, and reclaiming power in a world that had long sought to control him. The scandal also had ripple effects across the industry. Other artists who had previously stayed silent found courage to speak out. Discussions about child artists, record label accountability, and mental health in music gained momentum. Industry insiders began re-examining contracts, mentorship roles, and financial transparency. Even hypothetical government investigations were suggested in media circles. How could a label grow so powerful while allegedly engaging in financial manipulation, emotional abuse, and the exploitation of minors? The questions weren't just rhetorical, they were systemic, exposing gaps in regulation, oversight, and ethics that have plagued entertainment for decades. Fans, too, became activists in their own way. Online campaigns pushed for more transparency, for better protections for young artists, and for awareness of abuse in the music world. Social media platforms lit up with archival footage, lyric breakdowns, and side-by-side comparisons of public personas versus alleged private behaviors. It was a cultural reckoning. A generation that had grown up idolizing Lil Wayne now saw the full context of his rise, the brilliance intertwined with exploitation, the success built atop trauma, and the resilience that allowed him to survive it all. Even today, the story resonates. Interviews in 2025 reflect Wayne's measured reflections on his past. He acknowledges the challenges, the manipulation, and the psychological toll, while emphasizing survival and creative triumph. Birdman, meanwhile, continues to call Wayne his son publicly, maintaining the facade of family loyalty. But reconciliation doesn't erase history. The incidents, eyewitness accounts, leaked documents, lawsuits, and public reactions exist forever. They form a record of one of the most shocking and complex stories in hip-hop, a story of a child rising to superstardom under circumstances that were anything but ordinary, and the biggest takeaway? Wayne survived what many might not have. He thrived, influenced a generation, and reshaped hip-hop entirely. But survival shouldn't be the benchmark. Protection, accountability, and oversight should be. Until the industry fundamentally changes how it treats young talent, especially minors from disadvantaged backgrounds, these stories will keep emerging. The names will change, the labels will change, but the pattern remains. And the public must remain vigilant, informed, and ready to question what's being sold as mentorship, family, or opportunity. So, as we close this chapter of the saga, the questions hang heavy. How many more Waynes are out there, navigating fame, fortune, and trauma in silence? How many careers are built on exploitation disguised as opportunity? And how do we, as fans, as an industry, and as a culture, demand accountability when the people we admire wield both love and power in ways that can hurt the very ones they claim to protect? Stay tuned, fam, because this isn't just a story about hip-hop. It's a cautionary tale, a blueprint of manipulation and resilience, a public reckoning with private pain. And it's far from over. Yo, fam, now that you've heard the full story, the trauma, the money, the manipulation, the chaos behind the glitz and glamour, what do you think? Could you survive in Wayne's shoes? Could anyone? This isn't just gossip, this isn't just another headline. This is a raw look at power, fame, and the price some kids pay to become legends. And here's the question you gotta ask yourself. How many more stories like this are hiding in plain sight? How many young artists are being exploited while the world cheers their success? Is this mentorship or something far darker disguised as opportunity? The lines are blurred and the consequences are real. So, here's what you gotta do. Hit that like button if this blew your mind. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Do you believe Wayne's story? Do you think Birdman crossed the line, or was it all just business and love twisted together? And most importantly, subscribe for more breaking truths, investigations, and